Hello, everybody. Welcome to another very awesome family show, the Vamily Show, as I like to call it. And with me today, I have John McDonough, and he's a singer and songwriter. And I actually read in your bio some interesting information because you haven't always been a singer and songwriter.
That's
You,
right.
you from what I read in there, you are a retired psychotherapist.
That's
So
right.
did that lead you to any of your songs, like any of the songs you've created? Did that inspire any of them?
It definitely has. It definitely has inspired and influenced a lot of songs because I tend to always be. I still love therapy. I just don't do it anymore, and I'm still
Right.
very fascinated with. As I always say, I'm always fascinated with how a person, has what led them to have issues, and then what led them, what to like be healthy again.
Right.
And so a lot of my songs are when they're about other people, I'm always analyzing them, and lots of my songs are about other people, real people. And so and sort of in the back of my head, I'm always analyzing them for what I just said, like what
Right.
led to this, and so it plays a big part in all my songs. Yeah.
Yeah. And I recently and I deal with mental health issues myself, and so it was really interesting to find you do that. Is there any and I kind of talk about that stuff in here, and we got one person in here already, Eric the Goat guy's in here. He travels with I don't know if he still does, but he traveled with a goat around the country that he took around there. So I'm kind of wondering if did you have quite a few success stories where you had somebody come in and they were having a really, really hard time, and over the years of therapy with them, you were able to get them to where they were actually functioning again and
Yes, I had many stories like that, and they're so rewarding and so satisfying. And of course, mostly I'm just so happy for that person.
Right.
But yes, I did. But as it's and I've been through it myself. It's a commitment,
Yeah.
and you don't get a lot of the people aren't really ready or willing to make that commitment to really work at it for a long period of time.
Right.
So, but I've had a few that did make that commitment and did make great strides. And then, and I always talk about also too, the goal of therapy when someone would come into my office, the goal is for them to not need me anymore.
Right.
Right. So sometimes therapy can take a long time, but it shouldn't take forever. If it takes forever, you're sort of, in my mind, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And,
the goal is to get the tools from the toolbox. Is kind of the way I've heard it before.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So I have had those experiences, and they were great.
Right. And got another person in here, Linda Barker. She's usually in here as well.
Hello, Linda, and hello, Bob, and hello, the goat. If you still got the goat with you.
Yeah. The one song I kind of put it on my community tab. I believe it was The Place Where I Belong.
Yeah.
And you wrote that from what I heard about John Denver.
That's right.
Is that one of your influences then from before you started writing music?
Yeah, a big influence. When I was a kid, for 4 years, between the ages of 6 and 10, we lived in Colorado and in Denver. And this was during the 70s when John Denver was at his height. And we would go skiing every weekend and go to the mountains all the time in the summer. And my dad would always play John Denver in the car. And, and John Denver was just everywhere. He was huge at that time. And I loved him. I thought he was great. And so he's definitely been an influence and someone that I still listen to today and really enjoy.
And one of the stories that I always that I learned about him later on was back in the 80s when they had the parents and music council or whatever, when they were going after music to put labels on it. Dee Snider from Twisted Sister went in there to talk about it, but so did John Denver to talk about Rocky Mountain High because they wanted to label that as a drug song.
That's right.
So have you ever had people take your songs the wrong way like that they were about something else and you were like, whoa, I didn't even that first of all, I didn't even think about that but no, my song's not about that.
Well, that's a great question. And, I have, but it's never really been anything bad. It's just been a different interpretation, but nothing negative.
Mm.
And in that case, I always just sort of, I let it go because if the song means something to someone that's not how I intended it, but it's meaningful to them, I don't want to get in the way of that.
Right.
But like I said, but it's nothing ever bad that I felt like I needed to correct.
Right. And it's funny how songs, the interpretation, but then also when you hear them, how they can take you back to certain times. And so as a songwriter, I've written a couple of songs before, nothing super, but I've done it before. Are you able to go back in your mind into like the recording studio or certain performances of a song and really enjoy when you play it?
Oh yeah, all the time. And it's, yes, especially, well, I'll talk about one story real fast. One of the songs on my CD that I'm very proud of and excited about is called Nowhere Else to Run. And this is a good example of where my therapy sort of came into. This story was based on, I was in Berlin a few years ago, and I went to a monument called the New Guard House. And in that monument, it's just a stone building. There's nothing in it. You go in and it's there's a marble statue of a mother holding her dead son. And underneath the statue, buried, are the remains of an unknown concentration camp victim and an unknown German soldier.
Wow.
And there's a quote in front of it that says, dedicated to the victims of war and tyranny. And, Germany's done a great job with monuments to all the people that they hurt. But this one struck me the most. I just was so moved. I couldn't get it out of my head. And so I came back from that trip and I wrote this song. And it took a few variations to get it how I wanted it. But basically, the song is about the concentration camp victim trying to sort of forgive the German soldier because it's just the two of them. And right. So, and they're going to be there for a long time. So, she's trying to find some comfort in him because this is their lot in life. And every time I sing that song, I go back to Germany and I can envision that building and that statue and things like that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. My dad, when he was in the Army, he was back over there in the 60s, and actually stood behind Kennedy when he was over there doing a speech. And he said the difference between West and East Germany back then was, you'd look over in East Germany and people were starving on bread lines and they had everything over there. And he said he always felt bad because he couldn't help any of the people over there.
Mm-hmm. I know that speech you're talking about. And I mean, I've seen it. And so that's interesting that your dad was there. And it is fascinating. The whole history of Germany it's fascinating on many levels.
Yeah. He played in the Berlin Bugle Corps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and he did a lot of stuff. He went to Japan. He did quite a few different stuff, and that was one of the songs that I wrote down off the ones they sent me, and I kind of wanted to know the story behind "You Don't Know This."
Oh, well, that's a good story. That's a really good story. So, I always joke with people, that my life is pretty boring in a good way. There's no drama. And, you can only write so many love songs or, love songs about lack of love. So I have to I like to find inspiration from other things. Mm-hmm. And about 10 years ago, actually, this was right around the time when I was getting burned out with psychotherapy, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, but I just knew I needed to take a break, and I felt bad that I was struggling because I really thought this was the career I was going to, finish my life with. And I was very depressed. And at that time, my little sister, who I'm very close to, had a baby with artificial insemination. She's single. And I was living in Texas at the time. She's in the Chicago area. So I came up to help her. For my thinking was, I'll come up for a month and help you after you have the baby. Then I'll go back to Texas and get back to work.
Right.
Well, that month turned into 6 months. And then that 6 months turned into a year that I basically was up in Chicago. I became so attached to this baby and was having, the baby and my sister really pulled me out of depression, and it really changed my life. And so that song I wrote for her when she was, and she's now 10. But when I wrote that song, she was about 6 months old.
So does she know the songs about her now?
She does. She does. Yeah. And
so that's why think about it. Does she think that Uncle John wrote the song about me? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. She's been around me and the music and that song for so long. I think she just sort of, doesn't think a whole lot about it. I think when she's older, she'll be able to appreciate it more.
Right.
But that's why the song is called "You Don't Know This," and the things in the song talk about that, because, like I said, at the time she was 6 months old. She didn't understand the influence she was having on me and how she saved me, really. So that's I always credit her, because when I play that song and tell that story, I sell more CDs after that than any other songs. So I have to thank her for that.
So then that was kind of your impetus to move from Austin, where you were at up there, to that area.
That was a big one. Yes. So, after that first year, I basically had no life left in Texas, because I was up here the whole time. And I wasn't ready to move up here yet. I always vowed I was never going to move back to the Midwest, because I've never really liked the Midwest too much. So I spent the next about 8 years, I would come up every month, every 2 months to spend time with her, but I was still, based in Texas. And, when COVID hit, once again, I came up here and I spent, probably 7 out of 9 months of this last year up here, because I was really isolated in Texas.
Right.
And I was having a good time, and it just sort of hit me and I was getting sort of itchy anyway. I was ready to move out of Texas. So it hit me. I'm like, I was thinking about where should I go? And I'm like, well, this is probably where I should go, because this is where they are, and I'm enjoying it. So, the winters aren't the best, but I'm dealing with that.
Right. Yeah. I would guess, you get those nor'easters, and they blow in from opposite direction. Then the lake effect snow too, that comes out the lakes there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The winters are pretty brutal, but as I was saying, as I've gotten older, I'm not handling the summers in Texas as well as I used to.
Right.
So it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Right. I'm up by Seattle, so it stays about the same temperature year round, which is nice. So
yes,
that's more than a background. It's an accurate depiction of what some of the mountains look like up here.
I love Seattle. So I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I love that area. It's really cool.
Yeah. And so you've done 8 self-released CDs, and you're working on another one. Is that correct?
Well, I'm always writing for the next CD, and I have the material almost already for the next CD. But my new CD, that the songs that are on that you talked about, that literally just came out today.
Okay.
And so I'm going to be focused on this one for a while before I go back into the studio. Yeah,
for sure. And I know when I've written some songs, it just seems to be like inspired. I want to say inspired by God almost, because some of them just seem to come to you out of nowhere. Is there any ones in particular that you just had that just like the melody, everything just came like out of nowhere like that?
Yeah, I honestly, no, I can't say that. Usually my songs, they don't come quickly. Sometimes, because what I'll do, for example, is, I'll think about something for a long time, and I'll realize I want to write a song about it. Okay. And I'll think about it for a long time and sort of have the song almost half written in my head by the time I really sit down with the guitar to try to write the song. And then that just makes it easier for me, because if I already sort of know what I want to say and how I want to say it, I can just focus on the music part of it and, that element of it.
Right.
So usually there's a fair amount of prep work before I write the song. Then when I actually sit down to write the song, it comes fairly easily, but it's never like I just wake up one day and all of a sudden, like, a song just starts coming out of me. It's
Right.
usually it's usually I have an experience that really affects me, and then it goes from there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was wondering because I've heard some people talk about it, like Chris Cornell. I heard him talking about how Black Hole Sun, he was just driving and the melody and everything, just he had to get home and put something down about it.
Yeah, I know. I wish I had that talent.
Right. And you've done a bunch of tours of the United States as well. Is there one of your tours that you remember the most fondly?
The last one I did was out west, and it was really fun. And I love the West. I love the mountains. I love Denver, and I'm in Colorado, and
Right.
I love Santa Fe is one of my favorite places. And so that was really great because the weather was beautiful. The mountains were beautiful. I was most of the gigs went really well. And I was in Sedona for a gig, Santa Fe for a gig. So it's just all these sort of magical places on top of, having the experience of playing music.
Right.
So I have to say that one was really good. Yeah. My last tour, I had a big tour planned for the East Coast in last year, which I obviously had to cancel. But I'm very excited to redo that one because I want to experience the East Coast as well.
Yeah. The East Coast, when I've been there, I drove truck for years, so I never liked the East Coast just because when I was driving truck, because it was all packed together. I like the West more because there was lots of highway time between each city, not city.
Yeah.
Timmy Ray of the King's in here, and he's a big Kiss fan, but he mentions how Elvis Presley took and did some songs, did some covers. Have you done that on any of your albums where you've covered any songs?
On my very, very first CD, I did a cover of Fire and Rain by James Taylor. And this was literally like 25 years ago. And I did another cover that I can't even remember right now. But mainly I did that because I didn't have enough material to make a full CD because it was my first one. So that's the only one. Ever since then, it's all been my own songs.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I love playing covers actually. And my gigs, I'll play covers and I have a great time doing them. But for the CDs, I try to stick to my own music.
Right. Trips are in here. They're actually from Canada.
Oh, hello. That's another place I want to tour that I've been, but I haven't played music up there. So that's another goal of mine.
Well, they do a food review channel, and I know you have a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
And so if you guys want to go subscribe to that, it's in the description of the video, and your website's on there as well.
That'd be great.
Van Life with Gina is in here. She's a musician as well, plays guitar, played in bands. And so another one of your songs that I wrote down, I'm Home. And that one, just the intro, like as soon as I hit that and listened to the intro, it hooked me already. And you put just a little slide guitar at the start of that. And that's what really drew me in. How was the process of writing that one, and how did you come up with that one?
Well, I'm so happy you like that one because that's one of my favorites off the CD as well. And so this CD is an acoustic CD, and it's older songs that were on previous CDs that I wanted to re-record acoustically. Mm-hmm. And some of the songs came from a CD from 2014. And while I liked a lot of the songs on that CD, I felt like the guitar parts were frankly a little boring. And I've worked very hard on the guitar the last 5-6 years. And so I started reworking some of those songs. I felt, I felt like the songs were good, but they just needed to be tweaked a little bit to be really good. And that was one of them. I really liked the melody. I liked the words, but the guitar part was sort of boring. So I rewrote it for this CD. And I'm so pleased with the way it came out. And now I love playing it. But I'll tell you, that song, that was one that it actually was just sort of from a dream I had. I was sort of and so pretty much that song was just my imagination because it came from sort of a bizarre dream. And I just made notes on that dream. and I realized the theme after I made the notes, and so I just wrote the song. So I can't say I lived through that one. It's really that one really just came out of my imagination.
Well, that's awesome. That's kind of, well, that, I mean, you didn't get it all at once, but that's kind of one of those inspired songs.
Yeah, that's true.
And the album's name is Second Chances, right?
Right. Yes.
And so, is there, besides the songs getting a second chance, is there times in your life where you've gotten second chances where you're like, oh man, I'm glad I got one. I didn't think I was going to get a second chance.
Sure. There have been several that I'm very thankful for. Yes. And that's sort of I always tell people too, I think, except for a few things, I think people, everyone deserves a second chance, except for, a couple things. And so, yes, I definitely have gotten them, and I'm very thankful that I got them, and thankful that I was in a position to make good on it.
Right. You've been doing this for 5 decades now, and when I was listening to some of your other interviews, you mentioned like you had to really get over stage fright.
Yeah. And
I think that's something that people that want to do YouTube and stuff like that, they have to get over too. Being on camera is kind of like stage fright.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to people if they're having problems with stage fright? What are some techniques besides those old picture everybody in their underwear in the crowd, those type things? Like what are some ones that you used in the past, or maybe you still use to get over the stage fright?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll tell you that picturing people in their underwear doesn't work. At least it never works. At least it never worked for me. So, I'd say don't even waste your time doing that one.
Right.
Part of my practice and therapy before I retired was I was doing sports psychology and working with athletes to help them relax their body so that they could perform, at their highest level. And part of the research in that was so interesting that, your brain releases chemicals based on what's going on. Right. And if you, when you're under pressure, whether it's getting up on stage or whether it's performing on a football field, your body sort of goes into this the fight or flight mode. Mm-hmm. And even though it's not a life and death experience, your body sort of doesn't understand that, and it still goes into the same mode. And so it's sending out all these endorphins and all these things in your body that's meant to sort of protect you if you're going to get hit or something like this. It's very biological. If you, on the other hand, if a person is laughing, that lets out another whole set of endorphins that does something else to the body, which relaxes the body and calms the body. So one of my techniques for sports, and I use it myself and I recommend it for anyone, is if you smile, and I say, think about something that makes you laugh no matter what, all you have to do is think about it and you start laughing. Right. And if you literally just think about that and you smile and you laugh, it will release these chemicals from your brain and relax your body and help you feel then relaxed and perform better. Okay. And I would tell my tennis players, I'm like, I know you don't want your opponent to see you laughing. I know you don't want, right. I said, so take your towel and put it over your head and pretend you're wiping the sweat off while you're literally laughing into the towel. You'll be the only one who knows you're doing it. But it'll have a huge effect, and it does. So that's my number one goal number one technique for everyone out there.
So laughing at your mistakes is actually probably one of the best things you can do then.
That's right. Or like I said, or just laugh. It doesn't matter what you're laughing at. It's just the physicality of laughing will do it.
Wow. We got Thomas Jordan in here now and Linda M popping in here.
Awesome.
You get quite a few people sometimes.
That's great.
So I kind of wanted to talk then, like when you're talking about laughing, and if you start doing that, then you're from something I learned recently, you have neuroplasticity in your brain. And when we're talking about, the tools and stuff like that, you're retraining your brain so that it's all right when you're up on stage or you're in front of camera or doing sports or whatever. And does that kind of go along with imposter syndrome too? That kind of same area?
What is that? What is that syndrome? I'm not sure what that is.
Well, it's where you like people that get into doing whatever they're doing, sports players or whatever, they think that they shouldn't be there. Like they think they're even if they're talented or whatever, they think that they shouldn't be there.
Yes. That it definitely works with that as well. It's because basically what you're doing is you're sort of tricking your body. You're tricking your body into releasing the chemicals that will benefit you versus hurt you.
Okay.
And even if you're, like I said, so it doesn't matter what you're thinking, it's the actual action. That's if you tense up and go like this, your body automatically thinks something bad's about to happen, and so it goes into the protection mode. If you laugh and you stay open, the body thinks everything is great, and it releases the different chemicals. So it's really sort of tricking your body to help you relax.
So I got a question then. Do you find it easier to perform in front of strangers than people you know? Then is it a lot easier to do that? It
used to be definitely, because, and I think, I mean, there's a reason for that. It's because, it's easier to fail in front of people you don't know than it is the people you really care about. So that's why when people say something like that, that's the reason behind it. They might not really understand it, but that's the reason why it's easier to perform in front of people you don't know.
Right.
It's like getting, it's like if you go to a stranger in a bar and, get rejected. Yeah, that's easier than
you probably never see him again.
Exactly. You won't see him again. It's a lot easier than getting rejected from the love of your life who you see every day.
Right. So somebody you've had a crush on for a while.
Yeah. So it's the same principle. So that's why it's easier. And it used to be. It's not anymore. But what is still harder now is it's much easier to get up in front of a full bar and play in front of 200 people than it is to sit down in front of like 2 people.
Yeah.
And that still is the case, and probably always will be.
Right. Let's see. The other song that I wrote down that I really enjoyed was "Nowhere Else to Run."
Oh, yeah.
So what is that one about, and how did you come up with that one?
Well, that's the one about the
mental health that we were talking about earlier.
Well, that's the one about the place in Berlin that I was talking about. Yeah.
And that goes along with the stories of history, right? That you enjoy documentaries and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. I love history. I love documentaries, and so that song is about nowhere else to run. That's what I'm saying. They're buried there. They're not going anywhere. All they've got is each other. And so, they're like, we better find a way to make this work.
And it wasn't only just them though. From what I remember from you telling the story, there was a bunch of people that were buried there at one point. The lady that had the house, right?
Oh no, that's a different story.
Oh, it's a different story.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to hear that one. I think people in here would like to hear that one too, because I found that one really interesting.
Sure. Now that song is not on this CD. It's on my last CD, but I will tell the story. That was another just amazing, another true story. It was about a woman that lived in Franklin, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville. And she had 5 kids and 3 of them died at a young age. And so she was living in a fog. She sort of never left the house. She just was in a very depressed state and just sort of barely sort of surviving. This is all true. And her husband was a plantation owner, so they were pretty wealthy. They lived in a nice big mansion. And towards the end of the Civil War, one of the worst battles that took place in the war happened about 1 mile to 2 miles from their house.
Wow.
And in that, it was just a brutal slaughtering. And I mean, I think 6,000 or 7,000 people died in a matter of 4 hours of this battle. I mean, it's just brutal, horrible. It was sort of the
mind-boggling that amount.
Oh, and it was, and then of course, many more lost limbs and were injured. It was sort of the South's last stand. They were like, if we don't stop the North here, they're going to go to Nashville. They're going to take Nashville, and we're done. So they sort of they knew it was going to be a slaughter. They still threw everyone in there to try to stop it. And so as they did back then, they would take over houses to use as hospitals after a battle. And so they invaded this woman's house and said, "We're going to meet this place." And it's sort of this experience. It sort of actually brought her out of her depression and sort of brought her back into life. Her house was literally covered. Every square inch was covered with bodies of men who were injured. They were out in the yard because there was no room left in the house. Like I said, this was a big house. You can still see blood on the floor from where they were.
Wow.
Where they were amputating limbs. I toured through the house and went through the plantation.
Wow.
So it's just, and so it's like she woke up and she was a great caretaker to these men as they were dying and as they were recovering. She would hold their hands when their limbs were being amputated. She was just there in it. And of course, after a while, the men got better. They left. And then after, about a year, so they buried all these men in that field where they died. They didn't have time to do much else. They were at the end of the war, and they didn't. So the battle was over. The men that died, they buried right there and moved on. Well, about a year later, those bones started coming back up. And so they were like, well, what are we going to do now? And she ended up overseeing taking these men out of the mass grave and buried them. She took 2 acres of her own property, which was huge at the time because everyone was struggling after the war. So to dedicate 2 acres that could have been farmland for a cemetery was a huge sacrifice. Buried about 1,500 men in that cemetery and took care of them for the rest of her life, and would welcome the families for the rest of her life. Families would come knock on her door, and who they had no idea what happened to their son. They never heard anything. And she would be able to take them and say, this is where your son is buried, and give these people some closure. And so that song, so that's where that song came from. Another experience where, like you said, I was there, I was so moved by it, and I ended up writing a song. It's called She Brings Salvation.
Wow. So is that a lot of times when you go on tour now, like if you see a documentary about something, you're almost like, I want to make a tour stop around there so I can actually go see these places?
Yes, I love to go to places and see where things happened that moved me. And so I was actually planning a trip to Nashville. This was a few years ago, and it just hit me. I'm like, wait, that place is right there outside of Nashville where this took place. And so I immediately booked a tour and made sure that I made a stop in Franklin when I got to Nashville.
Right.
And if you want to I made a music video for that song where I actually filmed it in the cemetery and on her property in Franklin. So if people would like to go to my YouTube channel and check that video out, that'd be great. And it's called She Brings Salvation.
And it's John McDonough Live is the YouTube channel. I just put your Facebook link there in the chat as well. We got Koneman Studio popping in here as well now. So and on van life mode. And I got the van channels because I'm working on building a van so I can go travel around and do interviews too. Is there a vehicle that you toured in that you named, or did you still have?
Yes. Well, first of all, hello to all the van people out there. I have a little RV that I bought for touring about 3 years ago, and it's been great. I was very nervous buying it, I'll admit. I'm like, I'm 6'3". I'm like, am I really going to be able to live in this thing? It's small. It's like a Sprinter van.
Right.
And I have to sit down in the shower. I can't even really stand up in the shower. And I was like, am I really going to be able to, am I going to get in this thing and just go nuts after 2 nights? But I bit the bullet, and it's been great. I've had so much fun with it. And so, I call her Roxy.
Roxy.
Yes. And people will laugh because, like if they see photos of me at gigs, especially if it's an outdoor gig, they'll often see Roxy parked behind me just because that's convenient for me to get all my gear out and stuff, you know. But the joke is that Roxy's always there watching over me and making sure I'm okay. So,
well, people here will enjoy that because it's a big community of RVers and traveling people that I'm with, so we can understand that, and maybe we'll come across each other on the road.
hey, I would love that, and that brings me to a point. If please follow me on my Facebook page, my music page that you listed, because that's where I will post like when I'm touring and where I'm going and stuff. Okay. And I love meeting people, especially people that I've met like you now. So like, yes, and that's how people will know I'm in town if they're following me on that Facebook page. So, so please do, because that would be great. And you know, I have to say the RVers out there, they have to be the nicest people I've ever met. I have to say, you know, if when I'm on the road, if I have gigs night after night for a stretch, I'll just sleep at a truck stop. Yeah. But if I have like, you know, 2 or 3 days off, I'll try to stay at a KOA for that time. And, you know, I just have to say, I've not met one person that was not super nice and super friendly in those KOAs every time.
Yeah, you kind of have to be. You're although it's the one time where if you're living in it full time, where if your neighbor's a jerk, you can just move and it's no big deal.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Oh, and I did hear that you are building out your van right now.
Yeah,
right.
It's an E250 that I'm in.
So I give you credit because I could never do that. I am not technical or talented in that way at all. So mine came fully furnished, you know. Yeah. But so I give you credit. But yeah, but it's great. I love it. I can't wait till COVID is over because I can't wait to get back out there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this summer we'll all be rolling again.
Yes.
And, so you got John McDonough Live, and I think it's johnmcdonough.com, right?
John.com. Yeah, that's right. So my Facebook is John McDonough Live, and my website is also johnmcdonoughlive.com. Right. And I also just recently did this because I know my name is a mouthful and hard to spell. So I just started a Twitter account, and it's John M Live. Okay. And the very first tweet, the pinned tweet, is all my links. And so that's really easy to find. And then you can go there and then you can choose which one you want to follow. And it's right there. But it's John, JOHNM live.com or at. Right. Yeah. Right. For Twitter.
Yeah. I take and learn one of them at a time. So yeah. Instagram's kind of the one that I'm on now, like just trying to learn how the live works and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any part of you, because part of me misses the music days where it was like CDs and you pull. I mean, I say CDs. I mean, you remember the vinyl days, but where you had the notes and all that kind of stuff, and I'd pull it out and look at the lyric sheet. Or some of them, like I remember having Tool CDs where they don't even put what the name of the song is on there and that kind of stuff. Like, is there a part of you that misses that experience?
You know, it's a double-edged sword. I totally miss buying albums, the vinyl. You know, I miss the size of them. The artwork was bigger, and I miss the size. I miss, you know, I can still, like, when you open it and it would have a certain smell, you know, that was always like very, I don't know, something appealing about the smell. Especially the albums that you could open, you know, like this, and it became like a double thing. And then in photos and artwork, I miss all that. I do. But what I like about CDs is how if you take care of them, you know, they sound just as good 10 years later as the day you bought them. I don't miss the snap, crackle, and pop of the, you know, LP. Right. So it's, and of course now it's all streaming. People aren't even buying CDs anymore. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Now I'm sure. See, on the musician side, the streaming part's nice because your music just people can get it. It gets out there. You know, big artists, small artists, or whatever. You're all almost on the same playing field because if people like your music, they're going to stream it whether you're a big artist or not. And you can find all the links on your website and all that stuff. Yes. Do you have any shows coming up that you want to promote?
You know, I don't right now. I'm not booking any shows until I know it's safe to do that. when
Right.
when COVID first hit, I had to cancel all those shows I told you about and all the shows around my hometown. And then I started rebooking, thinking this was going to clear up by summer. And then I had to cancel them all again because, as we all know, it did not clear up by summer last year. So this time, I don't want to make that mistake again. So I'm not booking anything until I know for sure it's safe and the shows will happen. But I have a great setup at my house where I do live streaming. And I can easily see who logs in, and people can ask me questions, and I can answer on the spot, and or people can make requests, and I can play the songs. And so another reason I do that on my Facebook page, the John McDonough Live Facebook page, and so I have those coming up, and I'll keep doing those probably until the summer.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of what I like on here. They're saying that you're tall, and Linda M mentions how she loves the smell of a book.
Exactly. You get it, Linda. Yeah.
Yeah, and
and speaking of being tall, I was just going to say, I was actually just the other day, I was looking at some different RVs just online. I was just sort of online shopping, for the fun of it, because I'm 6'3". My RV, the interior height is 6'3", and I
so
just hit
any little screw sticking down, and you gotta.
I hit my head in there like 10 times a day. I go on stage and I've got nicks and cuts and stuff. So I'm like, maybe I should get something a little bit taller. So
yeah. Well, I'd definitely love to have you on again. Maybe before you go on tour, and we can talk about the tour and get you some tickets sold for a tour you go on.
That would be great.
Yeah. I'm going to play the credits and say goodbye to these guys, and then I'll come back with you after I play them. So
I just want to say thank you, and thank you everyone who came on for listening. It's been really fun, and yes, I'd love to do it again.
Awesome. Yeah, it'll be out on. This will be out on Spotify, same places your music and all that stuff.
Okay.